Have you ever wondered if the answer to a problem with your horse might be waiting for you back at the beginning of your training? Well, riding coach Josie Matthews is on a mission to help horses and humans alike by taking all riders back to basics, to resolve challenges we're experiencing and to make us better riders as we move forwards in our journey with our horse. With over 22,000 subscribers, Josie films videos that breaks down horse training into simple steps, so that in the arena, there's no confusion for us or our horses. However long you've been in the saddle, however many miles you've clocked up, if you're curious about how this has worked for thousands of equestrians, well, this episode is for you. Let's jump in, shall we? Josie, welcome to Curious Equestrian.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Now, I've got to ask you, Josie, why should all riders, however experienced they are, go back to basics to become a better horse person?
Because basics are forever giving to us. Basics are the layer of what we build our entire horse training repertoire on. Even like I'm a dressage lover, so even the Grand Prix movements of Piaffe and Passage should be based in the basics, and those basics need to be recognised and taught to the horse. They never ever stop giving to us. Our horse training isn't linear, it's actually a spiral. That's how I find it anyway. You learn a basic and then you go off and you practice it, and with that experience that you have, you come back and revisit that basic and it's something different. There's some nuance in there that you need to then go back and train the basics, and it's just a constant spiral upwards. That's how you develop as a horse trainer, horse rider.
Why do you think then there is such a stigma about going back to the basics when someone has been riding for years and when we've got that experience under our belt?
My honest, and I'm a very honest person, my honest thoughts on that are ego. That is the person's ego coming in. Horses certainly don't have an ego, but we do as humans. And part of training horses and learning to be a horse rider is learning to control your own ego. That's been a huge, huge part for me. I'm quite happy to be honest and admit that. I've learned more about myself with my horse training than I've ever learned about training horses. But yeah, I think that you find though, like my deep belief is that the top ethical trainers and riders all revisit the basics. They all do. None of them believe that they've done the basics and now it's time to move on. A few of my actual heroes in horse training will come back and revisit the basics time and time and time again for the reasons that I said in the beginning.
And our equestrian world is very competitive, whether we're competing or not. You know, sometimes it is just competitive in our own arenas, our own yards or riding schools, whatever level we're at. How can we remove that ego when we are in the arena or riding in the field and we have people watching and maybe a level of judgment there?
Oh, that's a really tough one. And, you know, I honestly have trouble dealing with that as well. But I always come back to thinking about the horse because it has to be about the horse. Yes, we have competitions. Yes, there are like the Olympics and people want to get there and they want to be gold medalists. But if they get caught up in that, that's when I believe that our training goes pear-shaped. If you keep the horse as the core of what you're trying to do, you can still reach that, because don't tell me that, like I am dressage related, but so don't tell me that beautiful dressage at the top level can't be beautiful. It can. I think we may have just gone off on a bit of a side step at the moment, but I'm hoping we will come back. Because if you train the basics and train the horse correctly, it is beautiful. And even a not-so-athletic horse is made more beautiful by training and going back to basics and working on those. It brings the inherent beauty out of any horse.
Oh, there's lots to unpack there, Josie. Take us through what that sidestep is. You say that dressage has taken a bit of a sidestep at the moment. What is that in your mind?
So I see the little sidestep that we've made, particularly with a lot of social media. I see a lot of poor horse training without the horse's best interest at heart. I see horses that are stressed, that are anxious, that are trained that's not for their benefit. And I really would like people, I think we're coming back. I can see that we're coming back into more ethical training. So, I just see that our horse training has made a little sidestep out, and now hopefully it's coming back in.
I wanted to mention social media when you bring into the conversation, Josie, ego, because as we all know, social media is heavily led by our egos, whether it's posting something because we want to look good or feel good or share something. Maybe we're trying to make our lives look perfect. Maybe we're, in our terms of our horsemanship, we're either trying to celebrate a win or, unfortunately, I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of viral posts on social media where the horse does not look happy, but it's getting lots of likes, lots of clicks, lots of shares because the horse is behaving dramatically, and it's giving that trainer a chance to show what they're doing with the horse. But there's a lot of high emotion there, whether it's the trainer or the owner or the rider getting irritated or trying to dominate the horse. How does that make you feel as a trainer when you see these types of posts going viral and getting all of that attention?
Mostly as a trainer, my heart breaks for the horse. It really does, because the horse has got to that situation from usually, like from the ones that I've seen, we might not be talking about the same sort of thing, but from the ones I've seen, it is ethical trainers that are getting a horse that has been confused because people don't understand how to train a horse. They don't understand how horses learn. They don't understand the basic nature of a horse. And so mistakes have been made and the horses got confused. I always think that I'm never going to get any viral videos because my aim is not to have those sorts of things happen to show people. But just on another point, a couple of my top videos have been, one was because Lily went for her first day out and had a big spook in the arena, and I managed to get it on film, and she was up on hind legs and spinning. That's been one of my highest viewed videos because of that. It was just a moment in there. It was just a basic training moment with a young horse. And I was quite happy to use that to grab viewers because I wanted to show them that, yes, this does happen, but this is how you deal with it, and you don't sorry, I've gone a little bit off there, but yeah.
That is exactly what I wanted to bring you to, Josie, because I was going to say you use your social media in a very positive way to show positive horsemanship, and many of your YouTube videos have had hundreds of thousands of views. So I was going to ask how you feel sharing content and actually trying to make change in the world of social media. And for those who have seen, maybe who haven't seen that video of Lily, can you just explain to us what that video shows in terms of Lily on her hind legs, but what you're doing in that video?
Oh, okay. Yeah. It was literally Lily's one of my own young horses, which I started under saddle. And I always teach a safety thing to all of my horses, which is a one-rein stop. It's safer for them and it's safer for me. So we were out having her first day out. She was in an arena at a local equestrian ground, and a truck went past with flapping plastic and rattling Rio rod on the back. And she's quite a noise sensitive horse, and she just decided that was enough. She was out of there. So I just put her in a one rein stop, which stopped her from bolting so that neither of us get hurt or run out in front of a car. It also, just the bending of the horse and getting the horse to relax does decrease their adrenaline rush. And it also gave me the time to speak to her and tell her that it was okay. She could move her feet in a small circle because she's a flight animal. They do need to move their feet when they're feeling like that. It helps everything just decompress. So yeah, that was what showed up in that video.
And how do you hope that you are using social media differently to help horses in that positive way, rather than these videos that we see that go viral that are quite distressing to watch as people who are into horsemanship and connecting with our horses?
I really like to think that one of my core principles when I started my YouTube channel was to show warts and all, mistakes and everything. Because when I was looking years and years and years ago, when I was looking for stuff to help me, I only ever saw polished videos, and it made me feel useless as a rider and a trainer. And I didn't know how to fix the problems. But I like to think that I show that. I like to think I give people solutions for problems with their horse that are ethical and take the horse's perspective. And like my entire aim is really to try and make the world a better place for horses. When I first sat down and wrote out my vision, I have to be honest and say, it wasn't about the people, it was about the horse. It was, I want to make the world a better place for horses, a kinder place where people can understand their training.
How can we, Josie, put our egos aside and humble ourselves in the saddle from a trainer's perspective? Because you must be greeted by many an ego when it comes to the arena.
Even my own. So I'm not perfect. I'm still dealing with my own ego. I have times when I have to take a big breath and relax. But I think humbling ourselves, learning how the horse learns, learning about its nature and its reflexes, and letting go of your ego allows you to have empathy for the horse. You also, the other thing I've found that's been really beneficial for me was learning to be kinder to myself. So when things weren't going as I wanted them to go, quite often we get frustrated, and it's not frustration at the horse, it is frustration at ourselves if you want to look at a deeper level of it. And learning to let go of that and go, it's okay, I'm learning, allowed me to go, it's okay to the horse. The horse is just learning. Horses will teach us anything and everything. It's just, are we humble enough to actually accept that they're our teachers and we're really not theirs?
That's so interesting that you mentioned sometimes the frustration we see, whether it's in our riding school settings, at our livery yards, in our arenas, or whether it is on social media, that the frustration is actually directed at ourselves, not the horse. But wherever that frustration is coming from, how do we control those emotions in that moment and actually remember the sort of greater purpose behind the session, instead of letting these emotions of frustration or irritation maybe come out? Because that's a lot of energy for the horse to take on, isn't it? If there are those feelings in the saddle.
Oh, absolutely it is. And that it comes from personal development of yourself as a human being. It really does. It comes through learning to breathe, learning to relax your body, learning to ground yourself, particularly if you're doing groundwork. I've taken on a new training, like a new learning process myself in the last few weeks, and I'm doing some classical in-hand work, which I've not done before. So I'm a beginner. I'm learning, and I'm trying to teach my horse, who is also learning. And so I've had to, even a few times today, I got to a point where it wasn't working and I had to stop, take a breath and think about why it's not working. Not go, oh, silly horse or stupid me. Why is this not working? And you've asked me a question that I think is very difficult to answer, because as human beings, we're all very different. But it all boils down to actually letting go of your ego and just learning some processes to breathe through situations like that. And if worse comes to worse, for goodness sakes, like stop what you're doing. Don't. Just stop. I remember being taught the old adage, you can't let the horse win. You have to finish on a positive. You don't actually. I'm going to tell you, after years of training, you don't. If you're having a really rubbish day at training your horse, put your horse away. Both you and your horse will be happier for it the next day.
And earlier you mentioned about the beauty of dressage. What for you, Josie, makes dressage beautiful when you're having breakthroughs in the arena, either yourself with your horses or with your clients?
Oh, just the pure the pure connection with another sentient being that you're working to get. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, sorry. But yeah, just working with a horse that's enjoying working with you, doing it in a way that is actually like my aim is to be my horse's physiotherapist and occupational therapist and make them as beautiful as I can, to make them feel good about themselves. Which makes me feel good about myself. So in improving my horse, I get a good feeling from it. It's not about improving me. It is honestly about improving my horse.
And do you think there needs to be more of a focus in dressage on that, on the connection, the feeling, like you mentioned, the goosebumps, rather than what our horse looks like and whether they are mechanically going through the steps?
Absolutely. I've been to many competitions where the horse that it wasn't the horse that won, was the horse and the rider that gave me goosebumps. Absolutely. And the horse and rider that won, sometimes I didn't want to watch. I'm being really honest.
Yeah. Why was that, Josie? What was it about that particular partnership?
Tension in the horse. Tension in the horse. The tail's whirring, they're actually rump high, they're pulled in behind the vertical, they're chomping at the bit. They're clearly like, to me, it's like slap in the face. Can't you see that horse is not happy? Whereas the person that rides the dressage test that's in harmony and soft and round and is just awe-inspiring.
And for you, Josie, the communication with our horses is really key. You talk about it as being a conversation and as removing that confusion between horse and rider or horse and trainer. Where did that come from you? Where did that inspiration grow from, do you think?
Yes, I know exactly where that started from. When I started out, I was a horse rider, and then I was eventing. I decided I loved dressage. I went to a dressage trainer, and then that's when I hit this point, which a lot of people get to, where you think you know a lot of stuff, and then all of a sudden you just tip over that point, you realise you know nothing, that tipping point. And I'd got to that tipping point, and I realised I was, I think, about 30 at the time, that there was so much more to learn, and I was not going to have enough life left in me to fit the education in with just one horse. So I needed to have more horses in my life. So I decided to start Horses Under Saddle. And so I went off and started that. And so taking a green horse that knows nothing and having to teach it how to become a ridden horse and learn what the aids mean was just mind-blowing for me. It was amazing. That's where I got the concept that I had to break my horse training down into letters. Like my horse had to learn a letter. A letter is, here's a bit of pressure, give to it. And then I could put those letters into words. Here is the bit of pressure this way, bend, now move this. And then those words become sentences, sentences become phrases. And then to me, the ultimate is to tell a story with your horse.
Why do you think that communication isn't always prioritised within training or riding lessons or within horse ownership?
I'm not sure if it's just not taught. Like, people don't, if you don't hear about it, you don't understand. I've been riding for how many years, and I didn't know. I had no understanding, and it took me starting to start Horses Under Saddle from scratch to learn to do it. So I'm not sure if it's just not something that people really think about, particularly in the field that I was in. I think I learned a lot from, when I started doing this, I went and worked with an amazing Australian trainer called Steve Brady. He was like a cow-cutting cowboy type man, and he taught me more about dressage than any of my dressage coaches had before him. Not that he taught me dressage. He's the one that taught me a little bit of pressure and release and looking for the try. And he taught me about how to break things down. So I'm just wondering if maybe in our English dressage type discipline that's not taught, whereas it seems to be a little bit more so in the Western type disciplines.
What common problem areas within riding do you see that need more work with the rider and the horse?
Understanding the horse's way of learning, understanding nature's way, even down to the very basics of a horse's vision and how different it is to ours. And to me, when I learned that, I managed to understand why horses spook. And so instead of thinking a horse is just a spooky horse, you get an understanding. And with that understanding comes a bit of empathy, or a lot of empathy as well on my behalf. It did, once I understood all of their nature and that. Also, I'd like to talk to a lot of people about fads and using newfangled fads and things that come in for shortcuts. There actually are no shortcuts. I don't care what anyone says. There are no shortcuts. It's a long road. You can't do it in a short time. You can get improvement, but it's a long road. And what I'd like people to learn to do is to use their own. They've got a prefrontal cortex. You use it. Think, if someone tells you to do something with the horse, does it logically make sense? Because I was taught a lot of stuff that didn't make sense. And in the beginning, I probably wasn't brave enough or had enough knowledge to do anything other than go with what I was told. But then I sit back now, even to this day now, I get told something and I'll sit and think, well, does that make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, I'm not doing it. I don't care who tells me.
Have you got a few examples, Josie, of things that don't make sense to you that you wouldn't do if someone either asked you or advised you?
Can I talk about a gadget?
Yeah, of course you can. You can talk about whatever you like.
Okay. There's a gadget. We call it a Pessoa in Australia, I think.
Yeah,
it does up from it goes up and it goes around the back end of the horse. And people use it to get the horse rounder. Now, logically, I think what we want in a horse's mouth is it going kindly to a soft steel contact. Every time the horse's hind end moves, that thing bangs them in the mouth. I just don't understand how anyone can think that that is a logical piece of equipment to use.
And Josie,
that's a classic.
Do you avoid all sort of the tack that assists? Is there certain tack that you would use and that you think actually that is kind on the horse? Or do you avoid all the gadgets and gizmos that are supposed to help us get the horse round and aid our training sessions?
Most of them, yes. I use a Sarita, a proper Sarita. I use a lunge rein. I use different size whips. I don't use side reins at all. But I'd also like to put a caveat there that I am learning still too. I am learning, and I may find somewhere where I think side reins are beneficial. I have a trainer that I ride with, a dressage trainer, and we were discussing this at my lesson the other day because I don't use side reins and he does. And I had my opinion and he had his opinion, and I love that because I go away and I think about it. I'm not going to judge anybody else for using side reins unless they're on too short and the horse's head is pulled in and it can't move, because they use their head and neck for balance. But so I don't use any gadgets. No gadgets as stuff.
Really interesting, Josie. So, inspiring for those to hear that maybe are reliant on pieces of kit and gadgets and gizmos as we describe. But actually you're saying with communication and good training, you can have the same results and achieve the same things just through other training methods. What would you do instead of using a Pessoa for those who actually think, oh, maybe I don't want that to bang my horse in the mouth, and maybe I do want to hear Josie out and try something else?
Well, I was actually just about to say all that Pessoa is going to do is get a horse to actually sit behind the contact, because it's not going to want to go there. So it's going to sit slightly behind the contact. And contact is it's a feel thing. Contact, you don't want an empty hand, but you don't want them pulling. So what I do instead of something like that is I do teach my horses to go around in a nice round position with a flexion to the inside, and we do it at walk on the ground, and then I allow the lunge rein out. And all horses, if you're talking about lunging them, if you lunge them out and keep them so they're not running off on their forehand because they're out of balance, they will at some stage hit their stride. I've got a video with me. I think it was Abby who I was videoing, and I got the moment in the video, and I talk on the video and say, there. Now, it was only 3 steps, but she started to swing through her body and she got that beautiful shape. And then I lost it because she's a young horse and she's learning, and then I got it. So I just sort of, you just have to be patient. As I said, there are no quick fixes. It takes time. And yeah, then in the end, Abby, like after quite a few weeks, she could go around nice and round and over her back on the lunge in balance.
I also love, Josie, that you mentioned earlier on that in a session you will make sure that you bring in that need for the horse to express itself as it should do, as it would in nature, as it would in the wild, as they're so inherently and instinctually do. How can you describe for us how you do allow for that in a training session, for them to be a horse, essentially?
How do I do that? That's interesting. I let my horse be a horse. Grayson was doing it today. I was doing some in-hand work with him and getting him, starting to teach him to go out on the lunge in exactly what I was talking to you about. Pardon me, but I was only about 3 feet away from him, and he would just get really excited and literally do a little hop rear and stand on his hind legs because he was excited. And I think I'm not going to tell him off for that, because in 5 years' time, I want him to have some expression like that. Maybe not rearing, but, I want him to keep that exuberance. I want him to enjoy what he's doing with me. Once upon a time, as I said many years ago, I was the totalitarian, you will do, I will say. I had obedient horses, but they were dull horses. I've got excitable horses. I took Lily out for about her 4th clinic the other day, and it was a 2-day clinic. And the first day we didn't get very much done because she was so exuberant and so excited and hot. She was running, jumping, threatening to put her head between her legs. And now I don't enjoy that, so I don't think I enjoy it. But I'm not going to tell her off for. She's not dirty. She's not naughty. She's just being a horse. And I want that, because I want that later on down the track. I want that exuberance, and I want her to enjoy what she's doing.
And if you tell her off, then actually it reins them in, doesn't it? And it stops them from expressing their personality.
It expresses their personality. They become a beast of burden. And, we're past those days. Horses are not beasts of burden.
Oh, I love that, Josie. And the reason I was laughing so exuberantly myself is because my mare has got that sort of fizzy personality. And if she wants to express herself on the lunge, she will, whether I ask her to or not, she will throw in a little bronc, or she will skip and hop about, and then she'll take off. But then she always comes back and she listens. But she also just wants to be playful. And I think sometimes, I will be on the lunge and someone might go past with something that she's definitely not scared of, a wheelbarrow that she's seen, 500,000 times. But she will want to play and celebrate that we're all together and there's movement in the hedges and there's something that's happened. And so off she will go and she will prance and she'll dance. And actually I will laugh, because it's a relationship. It's a moment, isn't it? It's a moment we're sharing. And actually, if I was doing some sort of class at my local gym and we were all dancing together or we're all working out together, there will be moments where we will laugh and sort of let out that together. And I want that to be the same with my horse, and actually say, I find you funny. I think it's lovely that we're sharing this moment on a sunny day together, and you want to celebrate, you want to, jump about. It's absolutely joyful. But I find it so sad that some people feel the need to then, like you say, discipline that behaviour and say, no, you are not, trotting to the count or listening to the canter transition. You're doing your own thing.
Yeah.
Do you think, Josie, just wonder what you think on this. Do you think that the horse world, the equestrian world, has traditionally, and I want to get my wording right with this one, but traditionally attracted those who want to dominate and who want to control? Is that why we see so many equestrians getting frustrated in those moments when the horse is doing its own thing and actually want to discipline and say, no, you must do this to my command?
That's a really good question, and I've not actually ever thought about that. I guess, like, back, I'm thinking of dressage itself was once a military thing because that's how it came about, so that the horses they used for war were A, well trained and could save their life, and B, it was to get the horses fit and healthy so they lasted a long time, because it took a long time to train a horse. Oh, look, there's a thought. There's no quick fixes. It took a long time to train a horse. Sorry. So I don't know if maybe it started back there because, there was discipline and you had to do as you're told or you died. And maybe that's just being pulled along when the horse isn't used for. I've honestly never thought about it, but it's a good thought now I've gone down that track.
And that is so interesting that you bring that military training into that conversation, because that is well and truly where that could stem from. That, like you say, back then it was life or death if the horse didn't listen to us. But now our horses are for leisure, pleasure and competition if we so choose to. But there is no threat of life, is there? Or there's no threat of win or lose in terms of wars. So that is fascinating to me, that actually maybe that's where the sort of dominance comes from in our training traditionally. And I love that you say that you see that changing now. Is that something that you hope, Josie, will be a thing of the past, and actually that we are enjoying our horses' spirits more and personalities and going with the flow?
I absolutely do, and I absolutely hope I'm a part of that. I do hope, though, I do have a small worry that it goes the other way, because at the end of the day, my horses are all around 700 kilos. They do need to be respectful of me and my space, because otherwise they could do me some serious damage. So I do just worry that we'll end up too, I don't know quite the right word, but to allow the horse to do whatever it wants. Now, like, let's take Rebel, for example. He can run, he can buck, he can kick, as long as it's not in my personal space. And like, I often think about trying to teach younger horse riders, it's like, even in the yards where my horses aren't on the lead rope, they need to be aware of me, because if Rebel was to swing his bottom and I've got my yard rails there, he would literally crush my chest and I could be dead. So, like, as long as it's very hard to find that happy central piece that we need to be. But yeah, I definitely think we're on the way there.
Fascinating to think of the journey with horses, as you mentioned, starting way back when with the military, and also think of all the other jobs that horses would have had, whether it was working farm machinery or pulling carriages and acting as transport and all those different jobs. And now our horses, unless they are elite competition athletes or amateur eventers, they don't have a job as such as to what they do on their day-to-day lives. And some horses, of course, are unridden pets, and I have certainly some rescues as well. And they belong in the field, they belong as pets, they belong to that family in terms of being looked after and cared for. But at the end of the day, as you mentioned, and that we're all aware as those who have horses and look after horses, they are dangerous. How do we try and get that balance right, Josie, of loving our horses and having that incredible bond and connection, but also making sure that the horse is listening in those times where things may get out of control?
Well, I think every horse deserves to have some basic horse training. Basic horse training. Sorry.
No, but this is where it stems back to, isn't it? Back to the basics, that we all get ahead of ourselves, don't we, when we say, oh, I've been around horses since I was a child, or, I've been training in this discipline for 10 years. But actually, back to basics.
Yeah. My foals, I've got a 7 and an 8 month old foal. They both know that they are not allowed to crowd into my space, and they are not allowed to bite, and they are not allowed to kick at me. They're not allowed to do that. They're taught that from the day they're born. But they're taught that by their mothers as well, and by other herd members. So, I guess when I'm talking about my foals, I just think of myself as a fellow herd member, and no, you're not to do that. The foals do get a little bit of leeway, a little bit like little kids do, but they're taught that from start, and I expect them to be like that all the way through. Kizzy, my old mare who's in the paddock, which due to a paddock injury I could never start under saddle, she's beautifully mannered on the ground. I just did basic training with her, and a very basic training when she was younger, and then just for the rest of her life that I've been handling her. It's black and white. You're not allowed to do that. Yes, you can do that. It's consistent and black and white.
And Josie, can you give us an example of a horse, either a horse that belongs to your client that you've worked with or one of your own horses, where going back to basics has had a really transformative impact on either the horse or the partnership, one that stays with you?
I've got one recently, Willie the Cob. He's a gypsy cob, bless him. And he came to me because the owner could not get him to do anything. She couldn't even get him to move. He would just plant his feet and not go anywhere, and then he'd throw his head in the air and bolt off and leave her for dead. He was such a little devil. He was beautiful, though. I just loved him. So he came to me for a couple of weeks of training, and I had to go right back to basics. In my academy, actually, I put my first video of him, which is the assessment day I did, and the guys really loved it because he really made me go, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this horse to move? Because he just planted his feet and he wasn't going anywhere. He didn't give. I'd rather have a reactive horse than a horse that does nothing. It's quite difficult. Anyway, I had to go right back to the very basics with him, and even I got him to even think about moving. I had to be really precise and watch him. And the minute I got him to think about moving, I had to reward that tiny, tiny, tiny try. And by the time he went home, I've got the most beautiful message from his owner I've kept. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Willie lunges, because he wouldn't lunge. He wouldn't do anything. I think the poor horse had been a little bit, people had tried to train him that didn't understand their own body language or how horses read body language. So he had just given up because everything he did was probably the wrong thing. This lady that bought him, sent him to me, had only just bought him, okay? So it wasn't her doing. She showed me some video from the people that had him, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was a bit horrified that they were telling him to do one thing with their body but wanting him to do another thing, and everything he tried he got in trouble for. So anyway, it was a beautiful outcome. He just lunges. She can walk with him now. They own a thoroughbred stud, these people, and he used to just take off with her, but now she can walk from the weanlings to the mares, and that was a really good story, and that was going back to the minutest basic.
There is so much I want to ask you about Willie the Cob. How do you, Josie, reward the try? Because that's something that we hear in our training. But what's the best way of rewarding in that moment that will give us the best communication?
Okay, so pressure and release is basically what we use to train a horse. And yes, we use positive and negative reinforcement. Pressure and release is negative reinforcement. These are the training theories, learning theories that I think would be really good if people would learn, because it would help them a lot. Anyway, so the pressure would have been on maybe it was it would have been my hand, because I do most of my work in the very beginning with a new horse at liberty with no ropes attached, because I want the horse to learn that I'm using my body and I'm talking to them, and I also want them to learn that I'm reading their body. So it would have been just a bit of body language and hand movement and maybe a little flag on the ground to try and get him to move. And so the split second I would have seen him flick an eye in the direction I wanted, or even in the beginning in a direction I didn't want, you have to get some response. You have to have something to reward. The reward is to remove the pressure. And with some horses that are really shut down, the pressure might be me leave the ground yard and come back 10 minutes later, completely get out of there. All horses are different, so it does depend. But yeah, I've had them where I've wanted them to do something, but they've done nothing, and they might have flicked at a fly, so I rewarded that because I want the horse to know I saw something, if that makes sense. So in the very beginning with the difficult horses, you have to help them see that you see.
Wow, as small as reacting to a fly, you're just looking for that spark of something. And you mentioned,
because otherwise you go up the assertive scale, and then you reach a 10 out of 10 in your assertiveness. Where do you go from there?
I know, I totally get you, Josie. You're looking for that communication and for that reaction so that you can work together. What do you do if a horse does just plant and refuse to move? Because that's one of the most difficult things that you can see, whether it's in a riding school or whether it's at a competition. And then it's that frustration between the frustration from the horse and the rider of where do we go from here? And it can be a series of flapping to, loud shrieking sometimes. What's the best way forwards if someone's dealing with a planting horse and actually the communication is just at loggerheads because neither the horse nor the rider is listening to each other?
And I would say neither the horse or rider is understanding each other. So my answer to that is something that people roll their eyes at and don't want to do. Get off, go back to basics, groundwork, something. You've got to find a way to explain to the horse what you want it to do. I've yet to find a horse that won't do what it's asked, or at least attempt to do what it's asked. If you're in a situation like that, it's because the horse doesn't understand the question that you're asking. Sometimes they're too frightened. They're in a freeze position. Sometimes what you're asking them and what you think you are asking them are two very different things. That's a huge thing, and that's the confusion of the rider, not the confusion of the horse. So, or the horse just completely is bamboozled, like Willie the Cob was. Like he tried so many things and never got anything, so he just thought, that's it, if I don't move, nothing happens.
And how sad. How utterly sad that our horses are deciding, actually, I'm going to give up because none of these humans are listening to me and they don't get me, so I'm just going to do nothing. I mean, that is awful. Are you seeing this, Josie, on an increase?
Not personally, I'm not, but I do see quite a bit of it when I'm out and about. Pardon me. It's terrible because I don't tend to go out because I just want to put blinkers on and not see, because it breaks my heart. But that doesn't help. But then I can't go out and speak to people, because usually when people in that situation, the last thing they want to do is listen to somebody, because they're usually too frustrated themselves, which is also why I've put my YouTube channel out. Like I want to try and make a difference. I want to help. And not only that, but, to me, it's a beautiful linear version of my learning too, because what I put up on 3 or 4 years ago on YouTube is some of those things have changed now. I wouldn't do things that way. I'm not taking them down though, because it's part of my learning process. I also want to show people that we learn, we can change. If I'm not changing, I'm not learning. It's as simple as that.
So interesting, Josie, that you mentioned a couple of times now about this miscommunication, the rider doing one thing and actually saying another, and the horse then not knowing what to do because they're asking all sorts of different things with their body and their vocals too. Where is this problem stemming from? Because you've seen it, I've seen it, I think we've all seen it, where it's a mass communication for that horse who's trying to work out what the rider is asking from them. Why are we seeing this time and time again?
I don't know about you where you are, but us in our country in Australia, I don't think that we have the teachers that teach that in great numbers. I grew up in Pony Club, where I was learning from parents who were teaching Pony Club who had never sat on a horse in their life. I mean, they were doing the best they can, but that was how it was. My mother, I don't come from a horsey family. So nobody knew. I look back now, I think, oh, my poor horses when I was younger. But anyway, so I think that we don't have a continuum of education where you start here and you move through this and then you get to here and then you get to here. And there should be some touchstones along the way that you meet to explain to yourself and to other people that you understand what's going on with the horse. I mean, particularly, again, I come back to learning theory. I'd never heard about it. I'd never heard about learning theory. And I don't think it was until, I can't remember now, but probably maybe 15 years ago when I started looking into learning theory. I did know about pressure and release and that sort of, but, didn't have the depth of knowledge that I've got now. And I still don't have a deep one, I'll be honest, but that's, I'm learning as I go as well. I'm always reading and learning and trying.
And for those who haven't heard, Josie, what is learning theory?
Learning theory is literally understanding how the horse learns, how it learns about the horse itself. It has a brain like us. It has a prefrontal cortex like us, but it has a tiny, tiny little one. It cannot rationale things. It doesn't sit in the stable going, tomorrow I'm going to go out and I'm going to bolt off when Jane gets on me and heads out the gate. They don't plan like that. Horses live in the moment, and we need to live in the moment with the horse. They can learn little amounts and then you need to rest them. That's the other thing I see done poorly, horses have a 45-minute training session. Well, some of mine get a 10-minute and then they go away. They've done everything, or they had a big breakthrough. So learning theory is, understanding your quadrants. It's your quadrants of your training when you come into positive and negative reinforcement, positive and negative punishment. There's classical training in there. It's all the studies that have been done about how animals learn. And I really believe if you want to be a horse rider and a horse trainer, you need to understand the basics of it. You don't have to do a degree in it, but you must have the basics.
And Josie, as you're myth-busting for us today, and thank you for that, can you also myth-bust? You so often hear about you can't stop the session there because the horse has won. Does the horse truly think like that? Does it think I've got one over on you, like humans sadly do, unfortunately?
No, they don't. They learn from the release of the pressure. So when you take the pressure off the horse takes a snapshot in its brain that is what made the pressure go away. So maybe that's the right thing. And I can see how people can put that into the context of if you're trying to do something with the horse and it's not getting it and then you just put it away, well, then it's won. But it hasn't won anything at all, especially if it's at a confused point where it's not understanding. Just put the horse away and come back tomorrow. Go away yourself, think through what you've done. You might have been trying to teach two things at once. I don't believe horses can learn two things at once. Just learn one thing at a time. And you have to once you've taught them one thing, you teach them another one thing, only one thing. And then you might teach them another one thing. And then later on, when they've got those one things down, you put those two things together with a shorter pause. No two aids, I do not believe, are ever given together. Even I'm trying to think of a simple one, like I go forward what's a simple one? Like no two aids are put together. There's always some form of a pause. The more educated the horse is, the more minute that pause comes, and that's when they look like they're working for themselves. A half halt, like my half halt, is a body thing. With my horses, with Lily at the moment, it's a body thing, and then I close my fingers, but there's that pause between there. So that's not two aids together, if that makes sense.
Yes. Josie, what one exercise can we all do today, going back to basics, that will make us a better rider?
Oh, that is such a good question. One exercise as a rider. As a rider, the one exercise you can do that will make you a better rider is to work on your balance. I'm sorry, but it comes down to balance if you're talking about riding, because if you're not balanced on the horse's back, how can the horse be balanced underneath you? He has trouble finding his own balance without an unbalanced rider on top of him.
Where do you begin? Do you begin outside of the saddle to work on your balance, or is that something you must do with the horse?
I definitely think you can do a lot of work off of the horse. As we spoke earlier, I'm running to increase my fitness, which helps me with the horse. And because I'm getting older, I'm actually doing balance on the ground exercises for myself, but nothing beats exercises in the saddle when it comes to balance. And like, they were a game changer for me. I remember it was many years ago now, I decided that there was a series of about 4 different in the saddle exercises, and I made the commitment to do them every day for the first 5 to 10 minutes of my ride. And I said, I'm going to do these every day for 3 months. And if they don't make a difference, I'm never doing them again. I committed to them, and it made a world of difference. And I did a YouTube video about those exercises, actually, where you can see me cantering on one of my horses, bringing both my legs up off the saddle, because it's balance. You don't hang on, you balance. So, yeah, it made the biggest difference of anything in my riding.
Wow. Now that is an exercise that I think we all need to try. And really interesting that actually we can, say, put down our training of our horse that we may think, oh, we need to work on this transition, we need to work on this dressage exercise. And actually, no, we're going to focus on what we need to do in the saddle for this particular training session. Not necessarily that we're achieving with our horse, but actually a rider-focused exercise that will then make us better riders for our horses. A shift in perspective rather than this is what my horse needs to achieve today.
Even now I'm doing that. Rebel's been out for 12 months. He's had some surgery and around a chemotherapy, and so he's good. He's good.
Oh, good.
So he's medium advanced. I'm not quite sure where that is where you are, but that was the horse that I did all my sit trot on. So I've been bringing up young horses and starting horses under saddle and riding other people's young horses all in rise trot. So my sit trot went out the window. So I still now, at the moment, whilst he's coming back into work, I spend 5 minutes every time I ride sit trot to work on my sit trot. I don't believe in doing loads and loads of it if you're not very good at it, because you bang all over your horse's back, and you're also just actually training your body bad habits if you're falling. But yeah, so I still to this day do exercises for myself on the horse. My warm up, I'm always stretching my legs and moving through my joints every day. I'm not getting any younger, so I'm trying to stay as supple as I can for my age.
Isn't that interesting that when you think of, if we rewind to everyone's beginning point with horses, whether that's because you come from a horsey family and you're popped into the saddle as a young child, or whether you've started in a riding school or pony club, why do we never warm up our bodies when we're doing essentially a physical activity with horses? We just jump in the saddle. No instructor will tell you to do a warm-up. But if you go to the gym or a dance class, you spend the first 10, 20 minutes warming up your body. Isn't that unbelievable when you actually think about it?
It is. And you just made the perfect analogy there. Riding a horse is like dancing on the back of a moving object. It truly, truly is. Because I use that analogy in my videos because that's what the tone you need in your body. You need the tone of a dancer. You're not stiff, but you're not flumped. You've got that internal tone of a dancer. So yeah, why do we not? I actually don't know. I have no idea on that. Maybe it's because it's recreational or something like that, and people don't think that you need, that's only for the professionals maybe.
Isn't it interesting? Yeah, the thought is that actually it's only if you get to that top level or competition level that you need to think of yourself as an athlete to warm up the muscles and to make sure you prevent injury. But actually, as you know, a regular human being that wants to go and do physical activity with a horse, whether it's your own or whether it's at a riding school, that is a horse as well that is going to take you into the saddle and carry you round for half an hour. Is it not fair on the horse as well? You know, more fair on the horse if we do a warm-up so that we're supple and, as you say, balanced and ready to carry ourselves, and not sort of trying to warm up as we go and get into the movement in the saddle.
Yeah.
As someone who grew up as a dancer in ballet lessons and contemporary lessons, the contrast is actually ridiculous, isn't it? If you think about it, we wear our kit, we wear our hats and our body protectors, but we just jump in the saddle and moments later we're warming the horse up. But what about ourselves?
And yeah, I'm certainly finding that as I get older. I definitely have. You know, when I was younger, I was probably, but yeah, I definitely finding that as I get a little older, I'm a little stiffer, which is why I'm doing a lot more of it.
And what would you say to those who, I'm going to use the word arrogant because we've already talked about ego, Josie, and there is a level of arrogance amongst some of us in the equestrian community who think, well, I don't need to go back to basics. I have been riding in the saddle for years and my family is such and such and I've got this trainer and I'm at this level. What would you say to them if they are reluctant to go back to basics, to work on an issue that's happening between horse and rider?
I would actually tell them that they are the people that need it the most. If they don't think they need to go there, they need it the most.
Wow, powerful words. And before you go, Josie, I've got to ask, do you believe that the fix to most behavioural issues or issues between horse and rider stems from going back to the beginning? Is there a fix there ready and waiting almost?
Sometimes. Not always. I think I'm understanding your question correctly. Is the question that there's always a fix for a horse problem to go back to the beginning?
Yeah.
Sometimes, no. I sadly have seen some what I call cooked horses have been really cooked, which is very, very sad. So no, there's not always and you can never have a first time again. That's something that I often tell myself when I'm starting a young horse. It puts a little bit of pressure on me, but I can never have that first time again. I want to make that first time the right time, a nice experience, not a bad experience for a horse. If they never learn a bad habit, then they never learn it. You know, it's very good like that. But
and
yeah, I have had. Sorry.
For us, Josie, who have never heard the term cooked horse, because I haven't, that's a new one to me. Can you just explain what that means?
A cooked horse is a horse who has been overwhelmed by humans that have been usually mentally and physically abusive to it, knowingly or not knowingly, okay, because people do it not knowingly. And they're usually sensitive horses, and I have one on my property which I purchased as a riding horse, and I do believe that she was completely cooked. I don't ride her because she just does not. She does everything for me. She do anything I ask her to do, but there is no joy in her life when it comes to being ridden. So She has babies for me because she's beautiful. But yeah, so a cooked horse is a horse that's had its brain fried, for want of a better way. Does that help you with an analogy?
Yeah, that's really interesting, and a term that I've not come across when talking about horses. I've heard about shut down horses, but cooked is a new terminology. And actually hearing you describe your mare, I think I've got a mare, Winnie, very similar, who had a terrible start to life for the first 4 years at dealers in Ireland and had about 5 different homes. And we don't really know what she went through other that she came to us terrified and nervous and, absolutely awful situation. And actually the best life for horses, like you described, that are cooked, is a peaceful life with a herd in the field and actually finding a different purpose for that horse and enjoyment without asking the horse to be ridden or to do things it doesn't want to do. I love in-hand hacking, going out for walks in the countryside. And I think there are so many different ways we can enjoy our horses, aren't there?
Absolutely.
But for you, Josie, the back to basics is the first port of call, would you say, in a situation where you feel out of control as a trainer or rider with your horse and thinking, I don't know where to turn, which so many of us have with various horses over the years. Your advice to them, Josie, would be?
Well, if you're having a problem with your horse, start at the very beginning and work your way through. You'll find where the problem lies. It will be there. If it's not a cooked horse, it will be there. There is a problem working through the foundations. I often get them, they come to me for retraining and there's somebody, I had a horse maybe 2 years ago that had been started by somebody else and the owners didn't like how it was going, so they sent it to me. Now, we all do things differently, and a lot of this stuff was done quite nicely on this young horse, but I found a few holes in the training that I would have done differently, if that makes sense. So I'm not bagging the trainer, like there was a lot of good work there, but there were just a few things. This was also quite a sensitive horse that needed going over. He needed to understand that he was allowed to be expressive. I think my gut feeling is that he had been shut down when he was being expressive. I allowed him to be expressive and he became the most awesome horse. I think his third ride ever under saddle, I was belting out, galloping over the paddock, through the paddock, over the back here, over 100-acre paddock, just galloping him, and he loved it. But I went back, and you work your way through and you'll find what the problem is. And it's always a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding.
And Josie, for those of us who want to look into the encyclopedia of basic horse training videos, where can we do that?
You can find me on YouTube at basichorsetraining.com. You can find me on my website at basichorsetraining.com. I don't have a lot there. I do have a membership there, though, which is more training related than riding related, although we are starting to get some more riding related stuff there. I have a Facebook page and an Insta page, but I'm not a huge social media person. I'd rather stick with my YouTube and my membership.
Josie, thank you so much for joining us on Curious Equestrian. For those who are watching and want a few more questions and insights, please join our membership zone, because Josie's now going to come behind the scenes and answer a few listener questions. So we'll see you there. Josie, for now, thank you so much for coming on and inspiring us on Curious Equestrian. I know that I definitely have been humbled to go back to the beginning. So thank you so much.